with my wife and 3 sons, 12, 10, and 7, and my 2 Shiba Inus, who normally, when I'm working from home, are in their crates until about halfway through the day so they don't interrupt my stand-ups. That was why I was running to go put them in. So I'm transparent, right? That's the biggest advice I'm giving to people is be transparent. We're all in this together, right? And the content I have here does not necessarily apply to just this new paradigm, but that's my biggest advice in this new paradigm is we're all in this together, right? So what is working out loud? Working out loud is observable work plus narrating your work. And what that means to me is that people need to know what you're doing. And Martha, if you go to the next slide, I'll explain why. Sometimes your boss, clients, and peers want and need to know what you're doing. If you're working remotely, and yeah, I'm sure Brett has done it a long, long time, and him and I have talked about this before. If you're working remotely when the rest of your team is working together in a single office, or if you're a distributed team, there's can be an inherent lack of trust. What are they really doing over there? Are they getting stuff done? Even if they're accomplishing their goals, could they be accomplishing more? Things like that. And so, Martha, if you move to the next slide, we want to build accountability and trust. And that's what working out loud is all about, right? We don't want the Bobs asking us, what would you say you do here? Right. The easiest downfall, in my opinion, for remote work is the company not trusting that their employees are actually working. And so some of the tips and advice I give on this is how to do that. And trust goes both ways. The easiest pitfall for employees is not feeling connected to their peers, right? Not feeling connected to their peers, not feeling connected to their company. The virtual water cooler is something that you need to make happen. We're all kind of getting the first taste of that. As a lot more people are remote than used to be, but you need to develop trust both ways. People can feel isolated when they work from home. People can feel not connected to their peers. They can feel like their input or impact on a project is not as well, is not being met with the same excitement that it might be when they're working in an office. And so working out loud is a way to try to encourage people to share what they're doing constantly, and really develop that trust that is not inherently there in working remotely. Martha, if you go ahead and go to the next slide. So communicating and sharing while remote. One more. So there's several different ways to do this, and some of this overlaps with what Martha was presenting. So I'll go ahead and Martha jump in here. I don't want to be on a monologue.
No, you're good. You're good.
So the tools, and I'll give a testimony for one of them here in a second. Real time, there's phone, there's text, that stuff we've all used forever. It's funny to say text forever, but it is. Asynchronous tools, Slack, Teams, GChat, or whatever they call it now, Hangouts, messaging, video, WebEx, what we're on now, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and that applies, for async, sharing files, Dropbox, Google Drive, Teams, OneDrive, Box. There's plenty of other ways to do this as well. And then Agile tools, Jira, Asana, you name it. These tools, we need to embrace these tools to work remotely. The anecdote or testimony I'll give is my company, so Centric Consulting is pretty much a distributed remote workforce. So we have 900 consultants, 40-ish working here in St. Louis. Most of us work from home unless we're on site at a client's office. So we're used to this. This is something that we've embraced. We made the plunge and switched from G Suite to Microsoft Teams in O365 about a year and a half ago. I went in kicking and screaming. I did not want to give up the collaboration I was used to in Google Docs and slides and all those. And it was I'll say a year and a half later, I was wrong. I was used to Slack. I was used to Google, I was used to that environment. Teams is, and I'm not here to plug the product. I mean, I love Slack as well. I still use it on client projects all the time. Microsoft Teams is essentially, it's the video capabilities that used to be in Skype, right? With a little bit project management tool, but basically foldering and collaboration and channels like you get in Slack. It's chat. Um, it's file sharing bundled with OneDrive. It's the only usable way I've ever found to use SharePoint. So I've been converted. I would never say that I'm a Mac guy. Been a Mac guy for a long time. Not a huge Microsoft proponent generally, but I've been converted. Um, all these tools have their place, and using them is a way to stay in touch. And if Martha, if you go to the next slide, kind of give my advice that how to collaborate in real time. Brett and Kat alluded to some of this, but it's the good morning message when you first log in, right? If you're working remotely, you need to check in often. You should be using the statuses on your chat tools so people know where you are. If I'm going to go out and in this new paradigm, I'm finding that, and Brett alluded to this, we had a conversation about it. I used to take my son to school. My normal routine was I'd wake up, help get the kids ready for school. I would take my oldest son to school at drop him off at 7:30, be home at 8, be at my desk at 8, and that was how I started my day. I don't have that now. I'm finding that I'm starting my day earlier as a result of this new paradigm that we're all in with COVID. And at 3 or 4 o'clock, 3ish, usually I'm stir crazy. I need to get out of my desk. I need to take a walk or do something to get out of the house. As a result, I'm posting it on Slack. I'm posting it on Teams. Hey guys, I'm going for a walk. I'll be back in a half hour. If it's urgent, text me. Checking in often is a way to keep people in the loop so that it's working out loud. It's here's what I'm doing. Or hey, I'm going to be out of the office for the next hour and a half to do this, to go to the doctor with a kid. It's the let people know where you are, that they won't be, that builds trust, right? If they just see you away as opposed to a status change in Slack or Teams, they'll just assume that you're playing video games or something. At least untrusting bosses will. I don't, I'm blessed that my company is not that way because we're built remotely, but I've had in the past when I've worked remotely at other companies, there was a fear of, are they really doing their job? Brett alluded to this one as well about the microphone, but I'll say invest in good headphones. If you're easily distracted, if you want to pump music and there's people in the house now, especially when they're not, they don't want to hear my techno on designing and a few rooms over. If you need to be noise canceled, if you need to have a good microphone, you need to have good headphones. That's a no-brainer. Have channels for fun, virtual happy hours, music. You need to feel engaged with each other. Otherwise, it's just you're isolated on an island by yourself. That is, it's not just about the trust there. That's about building a community, building a company that has what's the word? It's on the tip of my tongue. Building a company that has a culture, right? You can't build culture if you're isolated. You can still have great culture as a remote company, but you need to do things like have channels for fun, have virtual happy hours, check in about the movies you saw, the books you read, the things that you're planning on doing this weekend. Even in this case, we often encourage in our company to selfie Fridays. What are you doing on a Friday night? And that might right now might be all of us sitting on our couches, right? But that's okay. It helps build culture of us feeling connected to each other.
Hey, Brian, if I can just on that, the it's when you think about it, going back to the whole question of routine, right? When you go to the offices, and this is especially true for people who are used to working in an office, you spend a good portion of your day doing these fun things, right? When you come in the morning, You don't just go sit down at the desk and start working. You say, "Hey, how are you? How was your weekend? How was your kid's basketball game or whatever?" That's not going to apply now, but that's all a part of like Brian says, the culture, and I mean it all contributes to the morale or esprit de corps or whatever you want to call that, which all goes towards building that trust, right? Because you have more of a relationship beyond just being a task rabbit doing your jobs out of the backlog that day.
You feel less like a fiver and you feel like more of a real person, right? You're building that culture. I totally agree. And I think that, especially important in this paradigm shift right now is to plan in some time in your daily stand-ups, in your meetings, in your conversations, just to have that catching up, right? My client right now, I'm working on UX UI lead, so I need to update my title. I'm no longer a CX or architect, right? I'm an XD lead in St. Louis, but the my current client in Seattle is in Seattle, right? And they're one of the epicenters in the states of unfortunately of everything going on with COVID-19. And so they're all isolated. This is all new for them. And on our daily stand-ups, which we use video, they are, we spend the good first 5 minutes or so just catching up with what's going on. Is anyone sick in your family? Is anybody doing anything fun to try to, combat this while you're stuck at home? What's the best way to, just what's going on, right? We need to plan for more of that time during our day when you're working remotely, especially as more and more people are working remotely, because we're not going to have that water cooler conversation. It's the only way to really feel connected. Find the tools that work for your team. I mentioned my new embracing teams. As a consultant, so with clients, we end up, our firm a lot of times when it comes to agile tools, it comes to collaboration tools, we're usually forced into what our client's using. So if I'm, depending on the project, I'm either in Jira or Asana or whatever, right? Depending on the client, I'm either in Slack or I'm in Zoom right now for the Seattle client. But find the tools that work for your team is good general advice. I think that I know Al that worldwide embraces video like we're doing here, and they encourage you turning your camera on. Right? That's a big. I would suggest that if even if you're in a work where even if you're 1904, it's wear what you want, and working from home now, you might be wearing your pajamas. I think being authentic and being real with video is better than hiding behind your camera off, right? It's the one thing that keeping the camera on video calls helps you do is engage more. You're going to be less likely to be working on work that's not related to the call. You're going to be less likely thinking about what you're doing ahead, what's the next task, what's the you know what you're less likely to be distracted. And I'll be the first to admit I have ADHD, so distractions are easy and aplenty. I have plenty of coping mechanisms. My desk is a mess at the moment. Right? I have plenty of things that could keep me distracted if I don't use something to help make it work. One of those is the bottom bullet is Pomodoro timers. So one of the advantages of ADHD is that you can be hyper focused at times, which is great when you're designing, right? But not great for your posture, not great for your for you know your life if you're going to sit down and spend 3 hours designing something, right? If I'm designing an interface or a wireframe or whatever, and next thing I know, it's been 2 to 3 hours has passed. That's not the best. That's probably not the best. You need breaks, right? So whether that's a Pomodoro timer, and I'm not sure who's familiar with those, but those are super easy to use, and you can set the times to be custom. The Pomodoro, I think the default is you work for 25 minutes, you take a 5 minute break. You do that, so that's in an hour, you're working 50 minutes, right? But it's a 5 minute stand up, walk around, clear your head. Same thing with our watches. Smart watches will give you the alert that you haven't moved in a while. I need both of those when I'm hyper focused. And if I'm not hyper focused, I need to find ways to focus. And that's video when you're on a call makes that a lot easier. And when it's the headphones for me helps when I need to hone in, right? If I need to find my groove or find my my mode, it's throwing the headphones on. Embrace the change. Oh, sorry, Martha, I skipped the.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you did. Go ahead.
No, embrace change. I already mentioned teams. Working from home is a hopefully you're all of us that are on the call. Hopefully we're in environments where we are supported. If you use some of the things we talked about earlier on this list, if you're checking in often, if you're letting people know what you're doing, if you're finding the tools that work for your team, if you're on an agile team, if they know what tickets you're working on, so they're not super worried about what that you're not getting stuff done, then you can be honest and say, hey, I'm going to go take the walk, right? So the change might be you're changing your work hours as we adjust to COVID-19. Starting next week, my kids are supposed to be remote schooled. So we've been all about change this week at my house and trying to prep for how do we adjust a house that was normally just set up for me to work to set up for my wife, who's a teacher, is going to be teaching remotely, and 3 kids who are going to be going to school remotely. How are we going to make that happen? And that's a change that we're going to adjust to it. We're going to find ways to make that happen, but you got to be willing to accept that there's going to be changes throughout the day. There's going to be changes throughout your life, and we're all right now in the midst of the largest change our culture's had in quite a while, right? That change and embracing it, not fearing it, not being afraid of it, is something that I highly recommend. And that's same with tool sets. That's the same with changing your work hours might be something that a lot of people are going to be forced to do because they're going to have kids at home that they didn't have before, or they're going to have even doggy daycares, things like that they used to have that are no longer there. My dogs have interrupted more meetings in the last week than they have in the last year, and that's okay. Right? We're going to get used to it. If you need to call somebody, and this is really just trying to respect cultural differences, age differences, we're all of different ages usually when we're working together. There's some people that are going to think something's wrong if you call them, right? I've gotten to the point where I usually message somebody first and ask them if I can call instead of just calling, or asking them if that for remote work you might be interrupted and they might not respond to you for a while, and that's a good sign that they're probably busy and the call's not the right time, right? That's it's just something I've learned lately, really in the last year or so, that if instead of just surprising somebody with a phone call, where they might be busy designing, developing, architecting, doing something, I'm going to ask them if they have time for a call, and then if they respond and say yes, great. If they say no, great. Let's table it for later. Let's schedule it. That's essentially my advice list. I think it's probably a lot of these are gonna a lot of the tool stuff is Martha's gonna dive into more specifics, right? Does anyone have any questions before we dive into Martha's? Or I've been doing this for 5 years, and I'm actually excited for the next session because the things that I normally do on site at clients is the things we're going to be talking about on the next session, which is how do you do some of the UX stuff remotely, right? So I have 25 customer interviews for a client coming up that a lot of which would have probably been in person and are now going to be video based. And how do I try to do a card sort remotely? How do I'm finding ways, but that's the stuff that's the bigger changes for me as we go through this.
Great. So thank you, Brian. And y'all can let things that Brian just talked about marinate, and we'll have time for questions because mine's going to be pretty quick. I'm just going to talk about connecting from home with your company, your team, and your customer. So connecting with your company. At 1904 for our stand-up, we usually have a company stand-up, and we're trying to keep everything as normal as possible. I actually want to speak to that just really quickly. this is such a big change for everyone, for the world, and there's fear of getting sick, and there's fear of losing loved ones, and finding some type of normalcy is pretty critical for our mental health. Um, like folks said, get out and go for a walk. Do some things that you might normally do, just do them in the new way, right? So, to that end, we have a company stand up every Monday morning, Monday afternoon, and Thursday afternoon. And that has now gone remote. And as you can see, this actually scrolled because we've got like 100 people. But it worked out really well. And we're getting better and better at it. We have company lunch and learns, and we're still doing them. It's just all remote. To what has been said about like being the one person that's not in the room and how you feel disconnected, I think everyone being remote is kind of helping to enrich the meetings that might often have one or two people remote instead of everybody remote. With everybody remote, everyone's having the same experience. And so if someone can't hear, everybody knows that nobody can hear, you know what I mean? Because it's not just one person anymore. So that's kind of nice. And with our first lunch and learn that was 100% remote, we had some drama. Like, I think they started using, well, whatever tool they started with, sharing, it didn't work because it only allowed 25 people. And so they had to go to our GoToMeeting account, I think from Hangouts or something like that. And so, you're going to run into those little problems. And if your company is connecting in these ways, then hopefully you'll run into those problems with your company instead of with your client. So we will eventually get to that. I started yoga at 1904. So lunchtime yoga, I also have ADD, and this helps me to center and also to stretch. It's just physically healthy, but also mentally healthy. And so we would get the largest conference room we could get at noon or 1 o'clock every day. And we were doing yoga with Adrian, which is in the center here. Everybody can see my screen, right? My assumption is yes.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, cool. So, so we've been doing yoga with Adrian, and we used to post, if we strayed from yoga with Adrian, we would post, hey, this is the one we used. So that's the top left. We post in the Slack, hey, we used this video instead today. But now we're all still following along with Adrian kind of on our own, because this week I couldn't get it together. I had a lot of client commitments this week, and I couldn't organize yoga like I normally would. And so the yoga club picked it up, and they were like, hey, just a reminder, we're on this day with yoga with Adrian, which is awesome. And then another thing we did is we started sharing free online yoga classes that are popping up as a result of COVID. So, sometimes when we skip yoga with Adrian, instead, we all do one of these online things that are popping up that are like often local yogis. And then we have the community, because we have a fitness channel where our yoga club sort of talks about things in Slack. So that goes to Brian's point of have some fun channels. And continuing on the have some fun channels so your company can connect. Yesterday, normally we work in the CIC, and on Fridays at 4, there's pizza and a beer kind of party at the CIC. And one of our guys spun up a gaming thing so that we could all connect through gaming as a company yesterday, which I thought was really fabulous. And so they were all logging in at 4 o'clock yesterday, or 4:30, sorry. So that was just really, really great. And you can see a lot of people were joining. Well, there's one, but a lot of people were joining the gaming channel so that they could connect in that way. So that's a lot of ways that we at 1904 are connecting as a company remote. And here's how we're connecting with your team. So we're still having our regular stand-ups. We're having them through Google Hangouts. Normally, what I like to do is have a team building question every day. And this is something you can do whether you're remote or not. And so we were doing this when we were not remote. When your team, especially when they first form, your internal team, you might not know these folks that you're working with, and you've got to get to that point where you are gelling as a team quickly so that you can work with your client very easily. It just helps to have team cohesion. It's probably a whole nother talk, but something that I do is I use these We Connect cards, and the green cards are really general questions that are, you know, pretty easy. You can ask them to anybody. You don't have to have trust built yet. They help you to build trust, basically. And so on the left, you can see there's kind of a bit brick background. I had taken this picture to share this with the team when a couple of folks were remote one day, and a couple of us were not remote. We were working in the office together. And that way we could, you know, invite those folks that were remote to answer our team question that day. And so on the right, where you see the like woven fabric background, that is a picture I took yesterday because with my couch as the background, because now we're all remote, and so we're doing this sort of team connecting in that way. This one was particularly comical because it talks about travel, and we all ended up joking about how, you know, going to the dining room of my house is on my travel bucket list right now. And I plan to eat it by having food that we picked up from a restaurant that won't let us dine in anymore because, well, nobody wants to dine in anymore. But so just kind of it added comedy for our team to just have those conversations. And then connecting with your customer. So this is going to be a little bit of your customer and your team, because we are using, this is not a real screenshot from our work because I can't share our work, but this is Miro. It's a competitor of Mural. I find it much easier to use. And as you can see, it shows like the name of whoever's moving things or typing things. So this tool has been extremely helpful in working with our clients and doing remote workshops, because you can see who's doing what, and it just helps. Everybody can see what everybody else is doing, and we're interacting just as we would if we were all together in the room at the same time, and probably even better than if we were all in the room together at the same time, because when you're all in the room together at the same time, first of all, there's always one person that called in. And secondly, and they are not getting the same rich experience that everyone else is having. And secondly, if one person's up at the board, other people aren't up at the board, or, you know, they might be crowded around the board, but often it's usually just one person, and this really invites everyone to participate. So we're loving this. It's really helping our internal team connect, and also us and our client to connect with our clients, our customers. And then this is a virtual happy hour. I am notably not in this picture right now, or that you're seeing. I had a family emergency yesterday evening and I couldn't be part of our happy hour, but I asked them to get a picture of it. And it was great. Everybody just sort of cracked open whatever they drink and just socialized. It's hard to connect with your customer when you would normally take them to lunch, or normally take them out to happy hour or something like that to connect with them. In fact, 2 of the 3 people on this screen are in Illinois, so they're really locked down now. So this has been really a great thing to reimagine our work from home scenario, how we would connect with our customer you know, without being able to physically connect with them. So that is the end of what I had prepared. And we still have 30 minutes, I think. So let's discuss. Y'all can feel free to unmute your mic and tell us about something your company is doing that's working. Tell us about, ask any questions that you have for Brian or for me or for anyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've been using Figma as a design team, so that's been helping. So we've been doing what we started calling a swarm. So if we're having an issue and design thing where we would normally convene together in public and start whiteboarding it, we've instead started going to Figma and collaborating together on there, and then putting our specific questions and stating who the user is, and then letting folks have at it. So it'll help with things with asking questions. Excuse me, I have braces, if you haven't noticed. So it helps with asking questions. And what we found too is it also gets at some of the nitpicky things where sometimes when you're whiteboarding, you miss that on the design, that spacing needs to move a little to the left. So that's really been helping on our end.
Great. I'm going to echo something that Brett said that just keeps coming through my mind is innovation happens in quiet or isolation, right? This is a time where we're gonna see innovation that's going to solve not necessarily the COVID problem, but problems that are going to, there's going to be new innovative solutions to things that, whether it's remote work, the tools getting better, or if it's collaborating together to solve problems collectively. I already saw folding from home, like when they announced the stuff for let people use use your CPU power at home to do some stuff around COVID. They didn't even have enough space for all the people that signed up because of collaboration, which is awesome. But the one thing that I wanted to just throw out there, and I don't have a solution for this, but I think it's something that I keep thinking about with remote schooling. And, I don't know if there's a solution for yet, or if anyone's got any ideas, but there's going to be a lot of disadvantaged kids who don't have the tools to do remote school right now. And school districts are going to be going to this, and it's, but the thing to do remote, you have to have, whether it's an old, tablet or laptop or, steady internet connection. You need to be able to support all that, right? And I think, people like us that probably have old laptops lying around or old device, tablets that we used to test with that are out of date. It would be great to find a resource, and maybe we just find one and share it in Slack once we do. But find a way to donate to those kids in need that are not getting those needs met as we kind of shift for this rest of the school year.
This is, excuse me, this is Holly. Brian, I just made a note as you were talking. I think that that's such a fantastic way that our community, which I personally have found to be extremely generous on the whole, could really make a difference. And Al and I will talk about how we can maybe reach out to some areas. I know I have lots of friends who are teachers and are probably, definitely personally impacted and may have some leads for us. So I know Al would be game. Obviously, we'll have to have some sort of drop-off point so we continue to practice our social distancing. But I'm looking to my right at a dusty laptop that moved too slow for me, but it's probably more than enough for a kid who needs to do something remote. And I think that those kinds of activities are things that keep the collaborative vibe going, even if it's not directly work related. Like Martha was taught, I almost called you Marga. I don't know where that came from. Like I just met you. I think that those kinds of activities and that out of the box thinking helps us stay connected. We have that, it's more, work is more than just work. It's those connections with others are really critical. And especially I was interviewing a company client this week, and he was saying that, I'm an introvert, so this is like my dream come true, to be ordered not to leave the house. But he said, I was really feeling for the people that work for me who are social butterflies, and this has got to be torture. They're like dogs with their nose pressed against the glass, wishing to go. He's like, if I flipped that, for me, it'd be like if you told me I had to go to a birthday party every day. It's my worst nightmare, And my husband is shy and an introvert, so I was sharing that with him, and he said the only thing I could think of would be worse would be a birthday party in a round room with no chairs, like nowhere to sit, and I would be forced to interact with people. So I think it's important to, like you said, with asking for permission for phone calls, it takes please is just a few letters. It's really easy, and thank you doesn't take much effort. When you're communicating via the internet and you're communicating during text, to remember to have, to use your good home training in those experiences so that it doesn't feel like you're barking commands at each other. I think that because there is that distance between us, and if you don't have the ability to work remotely with people in a virtual way like we're doing right now, there is an opportunity to have hurt feelings, or for those little sort of things that feel like microaggressions to build up. And it's harder to resolve those communications when you have that social distance. So I think that, one, I love your idea, and two, just a reminder, use all your best, Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, do the best you can to maybe level up your politeness, because it is going to really matter. I had to have a conversation with somebody at work this week because I said, I feel like I'm getting barked at. And I know that it's about brevity. You're trying to communicate quickly, but on this end, that's what it feels like. And I think it's important to keep that dialogue open between coworkers and to stay transparent in that way so that you can maintain a unified team.
One thing, if I can, on that, Holly, is one of the things that you hear all the time is most communication is nonverbal, right? I mean, and that's why so many people these days, when you're doing video, they're are doing things like this. They recommend turning the video camera on, right? Because when you're in the office, there are a lot of visual cues that you pick up on, as someone saying, asking for something, right? You walk up to someone's desk, you can see that they're busy. So you might say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And not just bark it out, right? As opposed to online, where it is, like you said, brevity, and you're just typing it. One of the things that I've got a thread in one of my notebooks somewhere on the subject of the unconscious cues or nonverbal cues in a digital environment, right? And especially early on with social media, with Facebook and Twitter, and working out loud, as Brian said, documenting, narrating your work is becoming better communicators, receivers, in terms of picking up on those nonverbal cues, those non-explicit cues, even in a digital environment, right? And it's a learning process, right? As kids, we learn those social nonverbal cues. My elder son is autistic, and he has absolutely no, he does not pick up on social cues at all, right? I mean, that's just the nature of autism. And what I kind of thought, when working, digitally online, is that in some ways we all now are lacking the ability to see social cues, right? Because there aren't any, right? So it's maybe not that we don't see them, it's just that they don't exist, but I kind of think they do exist. We just have to know how to look for them in this environment of Slack and Teams and video, and when we're doing interactive whiteboarding sessions even, right? You can kind of, it's an acquired skill, and again, something that we have to consciously develop.
I would absolutely love it if you could share out that article with the group. And I do think that what you're saying is really important. When you're communicating virtually, you lose some context. I'm like highly empathetic. And so I am, on the verge of empath. So I'm always reading facial cues. And that's part of my role as a researcher. Like, I feel like I've been training my whole life for this job. I grew up low income, so our fun was people watching at the airport and stuff like that, right? So I look forward to my days as Bert feeding the pigeons at the park. Like, even though I'm an extrovert, I love to observe and watch people. And some of those subtleties that you're able to get with face-to-face communication, or where you can see people's body language, you're only seeing their head and their shoulders. You're not, like, Martha and I both are like furious hand talkers. And so, you can like really experience visually how passionate somebody is about something if you can see their hands. But in this, unless I purposely raise my hands where you can see them, you can't see that. And some people are more monotone speakers or have more inflection in their voice, and those things can lend to better social cues, but that's not, I think it is something that we have to practice. And if you are someone who is more shy, presenting in this kind of format can be, or, participating can be really intimidating. And I think we need to, for me, I'm doing my best to assume good intent and not take things personally, knowing that brevity is part of what's going on right now, and that, people are probably not intentionally barking at me, even if it feels that way. If I get a text that's like 4 words and looks like a command, instead of an ask. And so I think it takes practice on both ends, whether you're somebody that is like me, that's always reading social cues, or you're somebody who's really not very practiced at that. And I think that particularly for, certain folks in certain kinds of positions in our community, the pileup of people on the spectrum and people with ADHD is larger than the average, and so to be sensitive to that.
I'm going to apologize, but I'm going to cut in, Holly. So we're almost at time. So I'm going to use a little bit of this time to go over our different memberships and how you can contact us. And then we'll go on to another bio break. And Holly, feel free to chime in on this part as well.
Okay.
So here at STLX, most of our things are completely free because we do want to grow the UX community, service design community, CX, XD, those sort of things. So most of our things are free, but we do have memberships. And with those memberships, they're just kind of tickets to our prices, to our events, or discounted memberships. And they help pay for all the things that we do. So as we know, nothing is free. And so these memberships definitely help us along. So we have a business membership, a pro membership, and a student membership. And also with that, you will also get merch. As you saw, Brian, thank you earlier, had one of our water bottles right on cue. So that is definitely something that you can receive, and also stickers and all those sort of nice things to promote STLX. But we are a nonprofit, so therefore the main way we're making our money recently is through membership. So this would be great if donations and memberships help us along. Holly, did you have anything to say about this?
Well, I was just going to demonstrate that once we can be together again, I don't know if you can really see this, but you can score a lovely STLX pen or pencil to show off your commitment to
Yes.
our mission. And these are no cost at our events. And I'm also donning a STLX button, which some more of those are coming soon.
Yeah.
And we just, I don't have an STL sticker on my car because I drive a jalopy and I try not to embarrass the organization, but we do have some pretty cool stickers and we would love it if you would. I'm cheap is really the bottom line, but I don't want to embarrass the group. So
I want to jump in just super quick because this is Martha, so I'm like basically a co-founder of STLX, and some people have asked why does STLX need money? You know, you do these free things, there's no cost. Well, there is often a cost that just isn't seen. Our website costs, Meetup costs. There are space sometimes costs. Often we're lucky and we get, you know, like this WebEx today is sponsored by Worldwide Tech, but there have been months where we didn't have a sponsor, but we still, you know, had an event. On rare occasions, we have speakers that get a stipend. So there are costs. They're small, but they add up. And we've had the co-founders have footed the bills on those a lot. And so that's why we have this. I just wanted to throw that out there because there's a lot of questions about that come up. So
Sweet.
And I also want to mention that we recently started partnering with LA St. Louis, which is just for digital and physical accessibility. So if you're interested in that, we've got some information on our website. I'm on the executive board. You can hit me up with questions as well. And we encourage everyone in our community to level up their knowledge of all things accessible.
Yep. Plus, we also have a service design book club. So we are growing and we are expanding. And with that, you know, there is the need to keep growing and ask for membership. So I am going to pull us into our next bio break. We're a minute over. So hopefully that's still enough time for everyone. And our next talk will actually be about research and design collaboration. So this will be digging into how to do successful remote work, and it will include a card sorter as well. So if you're wondering how to do some of these tools and techniques and things, now is the time to see it. So I'll see you all in about 10 minutes.
And